It's now my great pleasure to welcome Will to the stage for his certainly also very inspiring presentation looking into process analytics. And Cornelius mentioned that sometimes it would be great if, since the customers don't know themselves what they want, it would be good to present to them what they might want even before them knowing wanting it, right? And I think in the field of big data analytics and process mining, we do have a number of such examples where through intelligence and data processing, we are able to find out things people are not conscious of before, actually. You may know this example from the Target supermarket in the US, predicting pregnancy to an 18-year-old woman, even before the family would know this. So the father was complaining about this retail store sending items relating to, strollers and milk bottles and all this kind of stuff, complaining about this. And then came out that actually Target, the supermarket store, would have known earlier than the father about the pregnancy of his daughter. Through such methods, like Will is inventing and applying, he has not been personally involved, but I just want to share this fascination to this topic with you. I find it is very, very inspiring, and I'm personally totally convinced that a lot of this innovation we'll see in the digital world will stem from exactly such methods. Will has been working on for decades now already, and I'm very grateful to have him here. Coming to Will's CV, you may take the scene here already. It's also very impressive. I will keep it short. So, Technische Universität Eindhoven, so University of Eindhoven, and there he is a full professor of information systems, and he is also the academic supervisor of the International Laboratory of Process-Aware Information Systems at the National Research University Higher School of Education in Moscow. Since 2003, he has a part-time appointment at the Queen's and University of Technology, so Will likes to travel, apparently also, and his work is well demanded. His research interests include, most of us will know, workflow management, process mining, Petri nets, BPM, process modeling, process analysis. He's published very impressively amount of 160 journal papers, 17 books, over 300 refereed conference workshops, and he is the most cited computer scientist in Europe, with a very impressive H-index, to whom this makes sense among the academics. It's an H-index more than 103, which is probably what all the other academics will have to all together if we would put our citations all together. So, and he still has so much energy. So, Will, I'm so grateful you set up this whole initiative of the Round Table. Also so grateful you take your time being here and sharing your latest research with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Jan. So it's a great pleasure to be here, also as chair of the BPM Round Table Europe, which is a federation of roundtables. I'm very grateful that you are here with so many people. I'm very grateful for Jan and Therese for organizing this wonderful event. I've often been encouraged to come to Liechtenstein. I never did so, but it's great to be here, both for the scenery, if the sun starts shining, I hope, but also for this very excellent audience to talk about this topic. BPM is a very important topic in Europe, and we are globally leading. It's not the US, it's not other parts, it's happening in Europe. And I think the BPM Roundtable intends to exploit this and to make this more visible that is the fact. So in total there are over 20 of these local BPM roundtables, like in Liechtenstein is one, in Eindhoven is one, and at many other places there are such roundtables. We have formed a federation, and I think we should still see how we can exploit this in a much better way to share best practices, but also to get the attention of politicians at the EU level that we have something very special here. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the topic of process mining. And what was not on Jan's list, because that's a recent development, one of my other duties is now that I'm the scientific director of the Data Science Center Eindhoven. It's a federation of 25 research groups at my university, where we see that there is a spectacular change taking place in computer science, in management science, and in social sciences. The availability of large amounts of data is going to change everything. So the same as that computer science emerged from, let's say, mathematics, we see now that the availability of data will lead to a new field. And that's a very important field, especially because it combines management and social sciences with computer sciences, and that's exactly where BPM plays a role. So you all know these pictures. If we look at the last 10 minutes, we have generated more data than we did from from prehistoric times until 2003. So it's a quote that probably many of you have heard, but it's very important because it shows that we cannot do BPM in the way that we are used to. There is so much data and we cannot ignore it. And my proposition is not to kind of create huge dashboards with numbers, because I agree completely these do not help. We need to look at them in a much more refined and a much more flexible manner, and I think that process mining can help by doing this. So to talk more about the availability of data, I talk about the Internet of Events, and that's the input for doing process mining. What kind of events are there? There are events related to the classical Internet of Content. There is the Internet of People, Twitter, and all of these other things. There's also the Internet of Things, and that is just about to happen. The borehammer of Hilti will be connected to the Internet, will create new services, and will generate enormous amounts of data. We are currently talking about 18 PhD positions that will be funded by Philips on innovative topics like the shaving device of the future. The shaving device of the future will also be connected to the Internet. It will give you shaving advice based on the resistance of the engine and all kinds of things. We are talking about the drink bottle of a baby of the future. The drink bottle will know how much milk is in it, what the temperature is, etc., etc. Think about all of these types of data that will be there. And then there is, of course, the Internet of Things that you have in your pocket that is generating all kinds of things. So traditionally, BPM experts have been focusing on drawing diagrams like this. It's talking about standards, talking about notations, etc., etc. And there was a time where this was very important, but I think it is becoming less and less important. We need to look at the actual facts that are there and the facts that we can actually see. So that's event data. So I often talk about event data as the elephant in the room. So we can talk about maturity, and we can talk about Six Sigma, and we can talk about all kinds of buzzwords. But the thing that is actually there and that is undeniable is the fact that we have lots of data of what is happening in our operational processes. And the challenge is how to use them, not to reduce them to a simple dashboard with a simple meter that just measures flow time or something like that, or utilization, but to go to a much richer type of description. Some people would argue, the classical BPR view on things is that you don't need to know what is actually happening in the current process, because you don't want the current process anyway. You want to have a better process. And so people use the mantra, don't pave the cow paths. Don't build the roads where the cows are running currently. I agree with this statement, but at the same time, often we have no clue where the cows are actually walking. So if you have no clue where the cows are actually walking, it is very dangerous to build a new information system without really understanding what is happening. And I think that is the main source of many IT failures, many big projects that fail, because people simply oversimplify reality. and do not really know what is happening. So I have a very short amount of time, but I have many slides, so I will discuss a bit the role of models, and you will get a feel for it. And I will be using three relationships between reality and BPM models. One is the classical view, play out. Then I will talk about play in, process discovery. Then I will talk about replay, relating reality to these models. So the classical way in which we have been using models is that we draw a model, and then in some cases we build an information system on top of it. In other cases we just talk about it. But the typical view is that you make a model, and the model is going to generate a better process. So if we look at such a process, we can simply execute it. And if we execute such a system, I don't know, using an SAP system or a system from IBM or Oracle or whatever, it is generating audit trails. Either implicitly or explicitly, we are leaving traces of what is actually happening in such a process. So here, what you see here is every line in this table corresponds to an event that has happened, supported by some information system or not. So we know what case it refers to. We know the activity that is being executed. We know a timestamp. And we may know the person that did it and all kinds of other data. So this is the classical way that we use data. It is generating traces. I can look at a more complicated scenario where we go through the loop. So we synchronize. We do the E. Something was incomplete. We need to go back. And all of this behavior is leaving traces in all kinds of information systems. So the classical view that we had, and that also I had very much in the 90s, workflow technology is great. It's going to change the world. We just model what we would like to have, and then it will happen. That is, of course, nonsense. We know that today that it is not that simple and that you need to understand things much better. So we need to go away from thinking that by modeling we can simply generate information systems and that's it. So that's why in the last decade we have been stressing much more the topic of play in and replay, another view on modeling and event data. So the basic idea of play in is that you take a bunch of example traces, and these example traces you automatically convert them into a model. So if we have these examples, then we can automatically infer the model that you see at the bottom. If we have some more, then we get the model that I had before. So we can automatically infer models based on what is actually happening. Now you may think, oh, this is very difficult. You need to have something very special. No, you just have a CSV file with the type of columns that I showed to you before. So it's really easy. The threshold to get started is really, really low. And you can very quickly get such models. So no modeling needed. You get a model that reflects reality. You can see the cow paths without too much effort, and then can start further analysis. Just to illustrate to you how simple it is, this is a CSV file. It's from a company called Vestia. The example that doesn't matter. This is about the transfer of apartments from one person renting it to another person renting it. The first column refers to the property, the apartment. The second column refers to activity. The third column refers to the time at which this event happened. This data is everywhere. If you look at SAP tables, I don't know, if you look at the 800 tables in a hospital, if you look at the database of a municipality, it's everywhere. So we can automatically, based on such data, generate models. And they show what is actually happening. This is a relatively simple process. This is taken from a Dutch hospital, and you can see that sometimes this is shocking for people to see what is actually happening here. So you may think such a model is not very useful, and I completely agree. But it's very important that people realize that life is more complicated than the simple BPMN diagrams that people like to draw. If you want to have a simpler map, it's trivial to create a simpler map. It's just like if you make, well, the map of Liechtenstein is very easy to read, but let's take the map of Europe. If you would show every road, you would not see anything. So you want to zoom into a particular part, and you can do that, or you would like to just look at the highways. So there are all kinds of techniques to automatically simplify these models. The last part, so let's look at replay. Now we have a model, and we want to confront this model with reality. The model has been made by hand, or it has been generated automatically. But we have a connection between events and the model itself. Well, if reality fits perfectly in the model, we can replay it, and by replaying it, we don't see any problems. I can just execute it without any issues. However, if we have a behavior in reality, so in reality this happened and it doesn't fit into this model, if we then confront this reality with this model, and there are many tools to do so, then we can find out where the deviations take place. So for example, in this case, we try to make a decision without having checked the budget before. And by replaying this, we can see that there is a deviation here, and we can report it. And if it frequently happens, we need to think, do we need to change the model, or do we need to change reality? And often it's a mixture of these two. But you need to confront models with reality. That is the essence of process mining, how you can improve things. So here you can see a fragment of an example. Again, the details are not important, but this is a model that this is a process in a municipality which has a almost perfect compliance. So 98.8% of all the events fit perfectly into this model. However, if we do replay, we found out, for example, that this activity was executed 23 times where it was not supposed to happen. So we can find these deviations without any problems. We can also replay things having timestamps, as you see here. And by doing that, you know exactly how much time was, for example, spent between this activity and this activity. By doing this repeatedly for large amounts of cases, you know where the cow paths are. You know how fast the cows are running. You know everything without any modeling. So you enrich your model with all kinds of information based on facts, much richer information than the typical information that you get from a BI tool, which is using an oversimplified reality without getting insights in where are the deviations and where are the actual causes of these delays. So I don't have time to talk about it. There are all kinds of tools already available today to do these types of things. Some are very rich and sophisticated, but also a bit complicated to use, like the one that you see here. So here, for example, we see exactly where all deviations occur, why they occur, etc., etc. At the level of models, but also at the level of individual traces. Without modeling, without doing a very detailed analysis, you get very much data. So you can support auditors in doing these types of things. But you can also do performance analysis. So here you can see the bottlenecks in the process, they light up red. And you can understand what is the cause of these bottlenecks. Were there particular people involved? Was it a particular type of customer? Etc., etc. The tool that I just showed you is it's a prompt tool. It's a very rich and also complicated tool. There are also simpler commercial tools like the one that you see here. So this is the hospital data that I showed you before. When you show all details, as I said, you can just show the highways if you want. So this is an oversimplification of things where we just look at the two most frequent activities. We know it takes 56 days. We can click on this arc and get all kinds of statistics. But we can also click on this red arc to see what is happening there. And we can replay. It is not working now. It was supposed to animate. But what you would see here, you would see a replay of 1 year in this hospital, what was actually happening. So as a summary, I hope I triggered your imagination a bit that there will be a flood of data. Everything will be connected to the internet, Jan's clothes, so that we can predict whether he is pregnant or not. So there are all kinds of things that we can do. It's not just about play out, the classical view of BPM. I think the new and the future of BPM is very much in this play in and replay. Discovery, conformance checking, performance analysis. That's where IT and management come together. For the people that are new to this topic, if you want to find out more, read the book, or you can go to some of the websites to get more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Will, for this inspiring talk on such an exciting topic. I would like to open the floor to the audience. Yes, please.
This is very impressive how you link all the data points into a model. Now, innovation comes from knowledge workers. They do usually not leave a trail of data. How do you solve with this problem?
You're completely right, and I think it's related to the cow path idea. However, what I see, if people are confronted in a visual way with what is actually happening, that is always immediately generating lots of ideas for innovation. And so if you go to a hospital and you do these types of analysis and you show an animation, not of a simulated model, but what happened in reality, that will immediately trigger ideas for doing things different and in a better way. So I think that this is really an enabler for innovation, but it's of course not the only thing. And so we often talk about the deviating cases as being bad. What I think, if you do these types of technologies, you can also look at the deviating cases, which are actually good, where you can learn something from, and they will give you ideas for innovation.
Thank you, Will, for the comments, questions. You could also ask in German if you wish. We have translators. Yeah, Jan, did that encourage you?
Yeah. Hello, it's a great chance to have you here in this session. My question is more a technical one. I have seen here you often use Petri nets, or call it Petri netze, and also BPMN models. Is there an advantage to use the one or the other one if you use a formal model or more a semi-formal model? And when you do this in your practical opportunity or ways?
So if you look at our tools, we are actually using perhaps up to 10 different notations, also declarative notations. There is the notion of causal nets that is used by many process mining algorithms in between, which is a kind of more expressive form of Petri nets with relaxed semantics. So process mining tools are using all kinds of different representations. But what I think is very important that we separate the representation that is being used by the mining algorithm itself with the representation shown to the user. So I'm very pragmatic. I don't care what kind of notation that people would like to see. They would like to see a particular notation and we convert to it. But when looking for the model, it is very important that you have, let's say, very good technologies to do that, but the end user doesn't have to know what the representation was used during the mining process. They are only interested in the result.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Jan, Rika?
All right. Yeah. Will, you just alluded very briefly to this notion of deviance and how it could be positive. I wanted to follow up on that because very traditionally speaking, BPM, the technologies, mining, was all about this notion of conformance, right? So we align models to reality and we're telling you, well, you're doing things that you shouldn't have been doing. And we'll give you a model in the first place to tell you what you should be doing, etc. So actually, most of that work is around minimizing deviance. And I think we'll have a couple of talks around when we find the deviants, how we get rid of them, etc., and so forth. And that I always thought that BPM traditionally was trying to make everything look the same and standardize and confirm, etc. And now, very, very slowly, we're starting to realize, well, Deviance can be good. Deviance can be good, and we can learn a great deal from that, from the people that are differently, from the process that behave differently. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so I completely agree on that. So for example, we are also applying these types of techniques to the study behavior of students. So if you have non-conforming behavior, then there are many, easy explanations. But they are typically obvious. They don't help you very much. What is interesting, if you see deviations that actually somehow have a positive effect, and then zoom in on these types of things, that is not just positive. So for example, if you look at the hospital setting, doctors are continuously deviating from standard protocols and thereby saving lives. I don't want to have a BPM system that is forcing doctors to work in a particular way to be compliant. So we should learn from these deviations. I think it's a very important point.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Will. I think that nicely relates to the next presentation by Marlon, but also to your later talk, Jan, exactly on the element of deviance, negative, positive effects related to this. Once again, a very warm applause with respect to time. We need to cut this short. Thank you very much. It's now my great pleasure to welcome the third speaker here to the esteemed audience, Marlon Dumas, who is a professor of information systems and software engineering at the University of Tartu in Estonia. We both have been there, right, Jörg? Maybe others have been there as well. Tartu has made an impressive development at the university. Marlon is leading a strategic area of STACC there as well, which is a collaboration research center that gathers 10 Estonian IT organizations within the aim of conducting industry-driven research in service engineering and data mining. So he also has a strong notion of university and business collaboration in research. From 2000 to 2007, he worked in the BPM group at University of Queensland, University of Technology, QUT, in Australia. Professor Dumas has received Best Paper Award at a number of conferences, and the 10 years most influential paper award he received at the Models Conference in 2011 also, so congratulations on this. And he's also a co-author of the recently published textbook on fundamentals of business process management, which also can be seen here. And Marlon is talking about deviance. What's if the process model doesn't look like it should be. I very much look forward to your presentation. Thank you very much.
There you are, and he just forgot to say that I'm a doctor as well. So. Yeah, but no, I'm a Deviance doctor.
A Deviance doctor.
A Deviance doctor.
That's very good. So you rescue lives from time to time?
I rescue
companies.
People from depression.
Very good.
Yeah, people from depression, stuff like
Let's
that.
talk about that later.
Yeah, right. So let me start with that, by the way. So patient arrives, doctor, my business processes are deviant. But what do you mean by deviant? Deviant what? Like, deviant, good deviance, like, few PCs in the middle of a bunch of MacBooks? Or bad deviance, like the Dutch team winning the World Cup? Well, no, none of those. No, not quite that bad, not quite that good either. It's deviant like non-compliance, purchase orders before quotes. You'll say it's normal, but supposedly it is not. Violations of service level objectives all over the place, high levels of customer complaints in my claims handling processes, high level of missed deadlines in all my processes, deviations with cost targets, too much rework in my processes. I get your point. I think we're getting somewhere. But let me ask you some questions first before making a diagnosis. So, don't you know anything about standardization, right? Do you have process models? Don't you communicate your process in your company? Isn't everybody aware, how the processes work? Don't you give guidelines to your process workers? Don't you automate your processes? Don't you monitor your processes? Don't you have process owners sitting in front of dashboards, looking at what's going on? So what's happening? Well, I'm doing all of them, doctor. I don't know. It's like we are doing all of this. But that's called governance. That's 20%. The problem is that remaining 80%, right? So here is what I have for you, right? What you have is called acute deviance mining, or ADS. It's endemic. Everybody has it. It's like this bacteria, right? It's present in 99% of the process population. Unfortunately, most process owners don't even know it. Some know it, but they opt to ignore it. Very few actually treat it, even less coming to the doctor for that. And the bad news about it is that deviance cannot be cured. But we can do something to put it into remission. And the prescription is as follows: is 2-pronged therapy, very hard on you. It's going to be very tough. It's going to be even worse than watching the Dutch team winning the World Cup. You first have to detect and explain your deviance. You have to find the root causes for your deviance. And we are going to use a treatment for that called deviance mining. And that's very painful. But if you manage to get through it, we are going to get a second type of treatment called predictive monitoring, which if that has not finished it, then you can watch the Netherlands winning the World Cup. And the way you have to administer is as follows. The first thing you need to do is to put together the logs of your processes, extract them from your system, align them, clean them a bit, and to define your business goals, explicitly define, your service level objectives, explicitly define your compliance rules, etc., that you want to monitor. And we are going to give them to our deviance mining machine. And that thing is going to produce a diagnostics of what exactly is causing your deviance. And then, related to that, if we get through it, we're going to do pretty much the same, but we're going to do it at runtime. We're going to see at runtime which cases are going to lead to deviance. So let me take a look first at deviance mining. So deviance mining concerned with 4 questions in essence. There is something that should have normally happened in a process at any given point in time. You send a message, or the customer sends a message, and a response should have been received within 2 hours, and it didn't happen. So the question is why it didn't happen. And something should normally not have happened. Like, for example, we shouldn't have had this document sent to this particular customer at that particular point in time. Why did it happen? What increased the chances that, the third question is, what increases the chances that my case leads to a negative outcome? And the opposite is, what increases the chances that my case goes to a positive outcome? So we are going to work both on the negative deviance side, we call it, and on the positive deviance side. We're going to push that out of our processes just by observing how the processes are evolving as seen in our logs. And we're going to apply this therapy in 4 stages. The first thing is we are going to frame the problem. We're going to say, what do we mean by deviance? And here is where our business goals are going to come into place. We are going to define business compliance rules. We are going to define business service level objectives on our processes in terms of our processes. And that is going to give us a notion of what is normal and what is deviance. And that's going to allow us to quantify our deviance. That is also going to allow us to put together a business case for this, to show what are going to be the benefits that we can obtain if we reduce the deviance. In other words, how much your deviance is costing. Then we are going to put together a team to collect the required data, identify what processes are in place, what data manipulated in this process is involved in there, how what should we include, what can potentially create this deviance, or what can be a predictor for this deviance. And we're going to organize all this data by traces, where a trace is one case of the process. Some of these cases are going to be normal, some others are going to be deviant, positive or negative. And then we're going to analyze those. And here, there's no one-size-fits-all. There are two techniques. One is we're going to say, this is the process model of the normal cases. This is where the cows run when we end up in normal. And this is the process model of the deviant cases. This is how the cows run when we get deviant. And we are going to take these two process models, stare at them, difference them, and we're going to find out what distinguishes normal cases from deviant cases, whether that is positive deviance or negative deviance. And we are going to give that as input for our root cause analysis sessions down the road. So this combines very nicely with Six Sigma methodologies, for example. The second technique is a little bit more, you really only want to take it if the first one didn't work. It's a bit more convoluted. We're going to take the normal cases and we're going to take the deviant cases, and we're going to apply some fancy stuff called discriminative sequence mining to find patterns that appear in the normal cases but rarely appear in the deviant cases, or patterns that appear in the deviant cases but rarely appear in the normal cases. That's what sequence mining can give us. And then from that, we are going to put them into some machine called a classifier. Don't worry what it is. It's going to give you some rules that explain when things are normal, when things are deviant. What happens when things are normal? What happens? What paths lead to things being deviant? We're going to inspect those ones. We're going to create insights. We're going to identify root causes. We're going to talk to people. We are going to find ways of fixing those root causes one at a time. And the moment you fix one, something will appear somewhere else, and we're going to fix it. Unfortunately, deviance is there to stay. It's just that deviance is going to be different every time. And this is not science fiction. We have applied this therapy in different places. Different colleagues have applied this therapy in different places. Suncorp Australia, largest insurance company, did a project precisely on this. Oftentimes their simple claims were taking unexpectedly long time to complete. Decomposed that into a number of cases. Did a number of plots, like this one. This is the time elapsed on the vertical axis for simple claims, this part, and for complex claim. And the objective is simple. We want to find how come some like 1/3 of simple claims are deviant this time in terms of their execution times. And we're going to find what can we do to try to push as many of those here. Obviously, when we do that, this is like water. Some of these are going to be pushed back there. So we have to push them back here, and it's a cycle. So gather a team of analysts, quantify this deviance, sell this idea to the process owners, to the managers of the call centers, etc. Involve IT experts in the team, and let's get started. And in this particular case, several techniques were tried, and what worked was delta analysis. So this is the process model abstracted at some level of simple claims, some abstraction of it, and that's the timely ones, and this is the slow ones. And then they identified exactly where, which tasks, actually several of them, were causing the problems, under what condition tasks were being repeated that was causing problems. And this is used all over the place. Case study at Philips Healthcare. This is near the place where the Dutch team is, where they try to find what characterizes certain sequences of events leading to faults in X-ray units. And here, they didn't use delta analysis, different. So they classify traces into good ones and bad ones, normal, faulty, and extract something called Fisher using these sequence mining techniques. Then they apply something called decision trees, which is a form of classifier, and they just, from there, inspect those ones and extract what are the rules that characterize faulty cases. Like, for example, when this series of events happen, we have a very high probability of leading to a fault. And from there, we can walk backwards. What is the potential, what are the root causes and the contributing factors of this deviance? Same thing has been applied in China. So this is not only Europe, right? This is everywhere. Large commercial bank in China looking for anomalies in their IT deployment processes using, again, sequence mining techniques like in the previous one. Large top 20 EU financial institution using deviance mining to identify anomalies in their purchasing process. Non-disclosed US healthcare provider in collaboration with IBM using deviance mining to discriminate between cancer treatment patients leading to positive outcomes and negative outcomes. Negative outcomes here is much worse than the Netherlands winning the World Cup. And then Rabobank Group's ICT recently launched a challenge, by the way, called the BPI challenge. All the links are here. That where they ask the data mining community to find patterns that will explain which IT change processes lead to more or less customer complaints, or defect reports. And if you have gone through deviance mining, the next step, and this is a little bit more science fiction, is predictive deviance monitoring, which is like, I have a set of running cases and I want to figure out which of them are likely to end up in normal, which of them are likely to end up in deviance. Will this case end up in a negative outcome? Will it end up in a positive outcome? Which of my processes will fail to meet their SLOs in the next 24 hours? Which of my processes are going to require rework before actually the rework actually is detected? And it's similar techniques, but there you have additional issues that you have amounts. You have to calculate times and detect whether you will violate time in advance or not. And you have to negative outcomes. When you want to find a negative outcome, it's not enough to explain it. It's not enough to say it occurs when this event happens, but you want to explain it as detected as early as possible. Large transportation provider, one of the largest transportation providers in Europe, using these to predict something called late show events in their transportation processes, where the carrier receives a package later than expected. And they use a combination of what we call regression techniques with classification techniques to identify what variables could be used to predict when was a late show event going to happen even before it happened. So here's what you have to take home. Recognize that we are all deviant in a certain way. All processes are deviant. Even the most standardized processes are deviant. And quantify your deviance for every process just as you quantify your performance. Analyze your deviance using all these techniques at your disposal. Monitor it, try to predict it as early as possible. And remember, every good process eventually becomes a bad process unless we continually care for its deviance. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Marlon. Any questions?
That's deviant.
That's deviant.
That's deviant. We should find the root cause there.
Any questions? Yeah. Are you?
Well, he's deviant too.
Marlon, thank you for your talk. Thank you for all the nice examples and the illustrations. I just wanted to tell you that I like your orange shirt that you're wearing.
It was on purpose, actually.
To be deviant.
Thank you for detecting
To be a bit
it.
deviant.
But then when I entered here, I noticed there were a lot of bright red shirts. And then I say, well, I'm less deviant than I thought.
it sympathizes a bit with the Dutch, one could say.
Yeah,
the
that was
orange.
part of the Dutch thing, by the way, if you didn't
So
notice.
it's very nice, very nice. Any further comments? I mean, on the shoes, for instance, or the hairstyle? Okay, yeah.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I've been wondering, when you search for sequences, for frequent patterns, and you use sequence mining, do you concentrate only on sequence, do you analyze only activities, like activity names, or do you also focus on people, relationships among people that can be also deviant or explain deviance? How far do you go into attributes that describe the activities actually you mine?
No, the logs, it is rare actually that you actually manage to find the root cause only by looking at activity stacks. That's very clear. The deviance occurs actually inside the task most often than not. You know, you have a task and it's sometimes performed in one way or sometimes performed in another way. For example, depending on the type of customer, right? Or for example, depending on the amount of time you have and the deadline and so on. And it's in like the different ways of performing the process, the activity that you will find the root causes for the deviance. So you have to include for every event some payload, you know, and the payload can be data attributes, or it can be the performer, or it can be the previous performer, and so on. So you can put all those attributes. And when you find the rules, it's not just about identifying sequences of events, really. It's about identifying sequences of events with predicates or properties attached to those events and tell you when this task is executed by this person and the next task is executed by this other person, the probability of deviance is higher than when the same person does the two tasks, for example, or when the people being in the same office do the same task, and so on.
Thank you. Further comments? Will?
So I will not comment on the Dutch team. But as I like the topic very much, of course, and it's also very challenging. You need to see frequent deviations to be actually learn something. One of the things that I typically miss in the predictive process mining space is to, in asking the question, already think about the things that you can influence. Because often the analysis shows you things that give insights, but that you cannot influence. So for example, if I look at the study behavior of students, and I look at their mathematics high school grade, I can predict whether they are going to fail or not, with a very high accuracy. But such a rule does not have a lot of, it doesn't help me to influence the behavior of a student in a positive way. So probably there should be some modeling before to see what your influence space is, to see where your predictions and recommendations should focus on.
Yeah,
Can you
I
comment
guess
on that?
in deviance mining, you want to find the root causes, and the root causes might be external factors to you. And it's very often the case that deviance starts by factors that are external to you, including this case study in this insurance company, where in fact the root cause actually came from the customers in some cases lodging the claim while they were missing certain documents, and a bit more complicated than that. But essentially, it was really on the customer. And of course, the resolution is like, to establish a better communication link with the customer in those specific cases. So you at least manage to nail down which particular cases you need to work out, where do you have to put your safeguards to prevent that, things derail. So in deviance mining, I see that less of a problem. In predictive monitoring, yes, that is a bit of a problem, because you might end up generating alarms that are completely correct. So it's not a problem of precision. Your alarms are being generated when the case will run late, but the alarm, the source of the deviance is outside your control. You cannot do anything. So I think what we need we can do two things. We can try to, in advance, start thinking like, I control this, I don't control this, I might be able to control that. Or we can just like, let the alarm happen, and then the user will tell you, yeah, fine, but I cannot do anything about that. And then to have some iterative learning, of what rules relate to things we control, what rules relate to things we do not control, and then be able to give better alerts to the users, so not overwhelm the system with alerts, the process owners or the workers with alerts all over the place. Yeah.
Yep.